Disney Plus brings together fans of all ages. This podcast brings three adults who are also kids at heart together to talk about Disney Plus. Join Scott, the Magic Genie producer, Regina, the sassy Megara of the group, and Nathan, the gentle but grumpy Brit, as they bring you news, reviews, special guests, and discussions on the Disney Plus Streamcast.
Hello, and thanks for joining us today for the Disney Plus Streamcast. I'm Scott Murray, and I'm here with Regina Davis.
Hello, everyone.
Is it me, or is it really hard to believe that we are doing our first episode in March already?
It's really hard to believe, actually. January felt like it took forever, but February just blew on by.
Yeah, it did. It's not going to be long, and we're going to have a one-year anniversary on this show. That's how far into the year we are.
That's wild.
We're already in a better position right now to be looking forward to stuff on Disney Plus that's coming out in 2021 than
True.
we were a while back talking about 2020.
And 2021 is going to be a great year for Disney Plus, as we've seen.
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say today, and Nathan, since we had a chance to watch some things on Disney Plus that we went over a couple weeks ago, where we read a top 15 list that talked about things you should avoid on Disney Plus. We picked a couple of things to possibly watch this week out of that list, and then the best things you probably haven't seen on Disney Plus. So we're going to do that a little bit later, but the only way that we can incorporate Nathan into that discussion is to introduce him for his segment. And what segment is that, Regina?
That would be a little segment called News with Nathan.
Hello. Thanks for the intro. Gosh, I feel so important. You know, you can't do things like that. Like, you know, you say that you want to hear from me and things, because then, you know, I just go off the grid. I take it off the rails because there's so much really cool stuff to talk about this week. C2E2, guys, that happened this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Couple of quick hits from there. Mark Ruffalo had a panel, and he said that he's been contacted and had preliminary talks about starring in She-Hulk. That would be good. Interested in that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and apparently the casting for She-Hulk, they're looking for their She-Hulk, and they would like an Alison Brie type, apparently. Why not just Alison Brie? I love her. She'd be a great She-Hulk. I'd watch that in a heartbeat. I'll watch it, whoever's in it. But yeah, I mean, that sounds like just perfect casting to me. Other bits and pieces that came out that were notable. The Emperor is a clone. I guess they announced that through a sort of a little bit sleight of hand. I guess the novelization of Rise of Skywalker comes out on March 17th. It was previewed at C2E2 in Chicago this weekend. And while you're sort of skimming through it, there's a bit in there where Kylo Ren apparently recognizes that Palpatine is a clone. Again, just tying up those loose ends bit by bit. We don't know what else is in that, and, you know, what other questions will be answered in that. Some of that stuff, you know, you can expect to see whenever Pablo Hidalgo and the Lucasfilm Story Group release their encyclopedia bits, and maybe even there's some retconning because of that High Republic series that's coming out in the books later on this year. Going back, way back, not related to the current trilogy, but back when, you know, there were lots of Jedi and they were very noble and, you know, well-respected order, and they're going to write a whole bunch about Jedi history. So who knows what they'll throw in there as well. The other thing I thought was really cool was at the Marvel Comics panel, they announced, among other things, that Ultraman is getting a comic book. They've licensed him, you know, the old, is it the Tokusatsu? I like Power Rangers. I like Godzilla. I like all that stuff. Ultraman was I was a fan of his when I was a little kid. So to see that throwback, especially after, if you ever saw those Spider-Verse comic books, wherever they had the Japanese Spider-Man make an appearance with his robot Leopard on, and, you know, he would announce himself as, I am the emissary of hell. I love it. So, you know, more cheese. We're all about the cheese. So yeah, that was interesting. Something else that was super interesting that happened just as we went off the air, I think, or last weekend, is our exalted leader he's decided to step down. Bob Iger, after I think about 15 years as the big boss in charge of the House of Mouse, he's stepping down.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be on the books as a consultant, and I think the executive president or something like that, one of those made-up titles, so he can shepherd his replacement for a little while and just, make sure everything's going as it should. He'll be with the company till, I believe, late 2021. His replacement is Bob Chapek, who he's done a fair old stint with Disney, 27 years in total, apparently. He's worked in many, many different divisions, like film distribution and Disney Home Entertainment, consumer products. Most recently, last 5 years, he's been in charge of all the theme parks. And so things like Galaxy's Edge happened under his stewardship. A lot of people who are, I guess, really into Disney have said that's fantastic. They've got a Disney loyalist taking over, someone who knows the business inside out, that's touched lots and lots of different aspects of that. The one thing he hasn't touched is creative. He hasn't done any of that, unlike Bob Iger, who came from that creative area. So they're hoping that maybe he can impart some of his wisdom and get him in touch with that top talent and make sure that Disney keeps on, I guess, being that creative tour de force that they're known for. I mean, in the last few years alone, never mind the live action, never mind new Star Wars movies, never mind Disney Plus, but also Marvel Studios. Who'd have thunk it? So he's got big shoes to fill. Disney Plus launches in the UK and Ireland and parts of Europe. So there's some other things coming that are going to perhaps steady that particular ship, and we'll see what happens in the months to come. Other bits that I saw that were interested for Disney Plus. Proud Family's getting a revival with most of the new, most of the original voice cast. I never really watched it. Do you guys watch it?
Not much.
It looks like they've lost a series. The Love Simon TV series, which has been renamed Love Victor, has been moved to Hulu. Apparently people thought that it wasn't quite the right fit for Disney Plus. They're trying to make it a bit more family friendly. And so they shifted that to Hulu. In the wake of that, I guess Hilary Duff has come out and said that she would like them to do the same thing for Lizzie McGuire, that particular reboot. On her Instagram this week, she wrote, "I'd be doing a disservice to everyone by limiting the realities of a 30-year-old's journey to live under the ceiling of a PG rating. It's important to me that just as her experiences as a preteen/teenager navigating life were authentic, her next chapters are equally as real and relatable. It would be a dream if Disney would let us move the show to Hulu if they were interested, and I could bring this beloved character to life again." I guess she's had a bit of a falling out with the Disney management. They recently, we spoke about this, they removed the showrunner, Terry Minsky, while I guess Hilary Duff was on honeymoon. As she got back into the building, the story that they were removing the showrunner because they weren't happy about the direction the show was taking, Variety already released that before anyone told the writing staff, the cast, and indeed the showrunner that she was gone. And it's kind of blown up a bit, and so that's sort of stalled in the short term. There's a really good write-up about the behind the scenes on Variety.com about that, so if you're interested, you should totally check that out. I don't know, we did say way back when, or at least I said, I'm not sure that that's a show that's made for me, so I don't know that I'd be watching it, but I think there were a lot of people who were quite interested in it.
I gotta say, with all the drama, I'm a little bit more excited now.
Yeah, I get that. That little bit of the
if there's such a
yeah.
struggle in the behind the scenes, I want to see, the final product of what all these various people are fighting for. I think that kind of thing is very interesting.
I'm with you with that. The other thing I saw that it's not toys, but it's kind of big boys toys. So I'm going to throw it out there just because I thought it was cool as get out. And also it relates to a friend of the show, Jeff Loeb, and we like him. Prop Store, which is an online auction house. They're auctioning off later on this year in June a whole bunch of stuff from Marvel Television. Now, they've already had a couple of these auctions. So there's a bunch of stuff gone already, but things they have left include Colleen Wing's katana, all the Jigsaw masks, a whole bunch of stuff from The Punisher, including Frank Castle's skull decorated armor, a whole bunch of Daredevil bits and pieces. If you actually register whether or not you you actually bid, you can win a copy of, I think, the New York Daily Bulletin with the front page with the Daredevil in the black suit on the front, or indeed a Frank Castle costume. No doubt it's going to be super expensive unless you want any of the Danny Rand stuff, which probably they couldn't give away. But nevertheless, I had to say it.
So messed up. Gosh,
but true,
dang it.
but true.
It's so true, man.
But in any case, if you're interested, propstore.com has all that on there. And that's all I've got for this week.
Awesome.
I actually read some rumors this week that I found kind of interesting.
Well, do tell.
And it's Muppet related.
Oh, shocker.
That's why it's interesting.
But amazingly enough, it's not about movies or television. It's about the parks.
Oh, go on.
There is rumor that they're beginning, as they begin to incorporate more franchises into Epcot, there's rumor that discussions have started about infusing more of the Muppets into that rebuild. Everything ranging from moving Muppets 3D to Epcot, which would generate some more space for things like Star Wars Land. They've noticed the popularity of the new Sam the Eagle restaurant. I think I read that, it's already a lot more popular than even Pizza Rizzo out there at Hollywood Studios. I read that as they start looking to kind of update and reimagine things like the Imagineers or the Imagination Institute, which is where Figment is, and then there's Innovations. The rumor is they're looking at maybe infusing the Innovations area with Bunsen and Beaker, theming it with all kinds of interactive things. And if you're a big Figment fan like I am, you read about the Imagination Institute getting redone, and you think, oh crap, what's going to happen to Figment? They can't get rid of Figment. According to this piece that I read, they've even had discussions of keeping him involved, but if they were to infuse Muppet side of things, they might even say that that's what Figment is a Muppet. So, really interesting, and it'll be really interesting to see what they decide to do with all these new park changes. I mean, apparently this overhaul of Epcot is pretty massive, so any number of things can happen. So
I've never done the Disney parks, but I know that I would give a body part to go and check out some of that stuff, and I don't know, that doesn't make me want to do it any less. I would just be more excited to go to Epcot. I'd be all about that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, though I got a feeling there's going to be a bunch of announcements on that because they've already started it. They've already started the overhaul. They changed the fireworks, which for years was the same thing, and I'm going to miss that one because I really did like Illuminations a lot. But I am interested to see the new one. So a lot of new stuff happening out there. We're going to get a chance to talk about some stuff we watched on Disney Plus, but it's not like our typical conversations where we just kind of see what everybody's been doing. We kind of planned ahead this time with the 2 top 15 lists of what to miss and things that we might have missed that are definitely worth watching. We picked a few things last week, so up next we're going to find out what everybody got a chance to watch and if we still believe whatever we watched fits either one of those top 15 lists.
That's next on the Disney Plus Streamcast.
Okay, so I had a chance to watch 2 things that were on the list that we talked about the last couple of weeks. Regina, how many things did you get to view from the list this week?
I also watched 2 things.
2 things? Okay, what about you, Nathan?
I watched 3 things.
Okay.
Oh, well, look at you.
Look at you, yeah, above and beyond the Call of Duty. Exceeding expectation. He probably knew we'd only watch 2, and he just wanted to be able to go, I watched 3.
100%.
You know what? Well, it was because I watched one thing from a list that I really didn't like, and then I watched another thing from a list that I actually thought was quite good, and I thought, this has subverted my expectations, so I should watch something else just to,
Rubber match. Break the
Yeah,
tie.
pretty much. And I wasn't disappointed.
Okay, so 2 out of 3?
I would have to say 2 out of 3 were worth a watch, and the
Okay.
other one that was supposed to be was not.
Okay.
Hmm.
I'll start off and let you know the 2 that I saw. One I did not even finish.
Oh boy.
Oh no. Oh God. This is gonna be funny. Okay, go ahead.
And the one I didn't finish was on the list of great things that you might have missed.
Oh.
And that was the Aliens of the Deep show.
Yes, absolutely.
And the reason why is it's misleading. Early on in this thing, I was really fascinated, because we were spending all this time, and it is amazingly fascinating what's down there and what we haven't seen in these incredibly smart people going down there with all this technology and knowing what's happening, both from an Earth perspective and then seeing some of that sea life that's down there, living in situations that human beings couldn't even live in, especially when you start getting around the lava and the smoke and the toxins coming out and into the water. And you've got all these little shrimp things that are swimming around really, and they're just loving every ounce of it, and that would just kill all of us. So,
Yeah.
and there were some fascinating, they showed like 2 or 3 creatures that were just weird looking, but fascinating. One was like this circular jellyfish looking thing, but it's just amazing to see something so beautiful and so weird, and yet it's alive. I mean, and that's the type of things I was invested in. That's what I wanted to see. But after they showed that, it turned a little more into a reality show about all the problems they're having. And then it started to talk about space, because there's parallels, obviously, to space and the sea, which is great. But then we start getting way into the weeds and inside baseball about those parallels and what it's going to mean on these different planets, and how this could mean there was water on this planet and there could be water on this planet. And it turned into a whole space thing, which is fine. I'm not saying space sucks. I'm just saying that's not what I tuned in for. I mean, and you're not sending cameras out there near like this and catching I know we have the rover on Mars, but, we're not seeing life forms and stuff out there right now. So they did it early on, and I thought, okay, well, there's a parallel here, so I'll let that go. And then suddenly it felt like that's all it was talking about, and I lost interest. So I just quit watching it because I felt like, okay, we haven't looked at anything under the water for the last 10 to 15 minutes. So I just quit watching because I just flat lost interest. I think the people involved are smart people. They're fascinating people. And I admire the amount of time and sacrifice they made to be away from their families to research this stuff. But I didn't need the lecture and the narrative on, parallels of space and how it works up there. It just took it away from me. Now, have you two seen this as well?
I have, and I loved it. But you
Okay.
know that I'm completely down for anything space related.
Yes.
So as soon as it went that direction, I was like, all right, cool. Yeah. So I loved it.
That was the one I watched off the list. That was the one that I was too disappointed in.
What? Okay. That's all right.
yeah.
That's all right.
Well, all right. So let me lay this on you a little bit. So I wanted to watch it because I knew there were some spacey bits in it. There's a scientist. I guess she's not a scientist anymore. Her name is Kelly Snook, and I think she's absolutely brilliant. I didn't know of her from the whole spacey thing as much as when she got done with NASA, she went into music technology and ended up making she's like Imogen Heap's like tech director and music producer, and she also helped create these things called Mimu gloves, which is kind of like these haptic feedback gloves that you wear on your hands, and you can trigger samples and instruments with them just by gesture and things like that. And that stuff is just fascinating to me. I love all that stuff. And so when I saw that she was in it, I'm like, all right, I'm in. I'm totally in. Much like you said, Scott, I'm there for the awesome stuff that was supposed to be on IMAX. The IMAX version was a lot shorter than the version that's on Disney Plus. All the extra bits they put in with the cheesy filler bit and the scientist looking off in the distance being kind of poignant and stuff. That bit sucks. It takes away, like, the immersion is gone. When they're underwater and, they say you're looking at these amazing plumes and the stuff that you've never seen before, It's fantastic. But then whenever you get like James Cameron and his brother going, "Oh my gosh, can you see those bacteria? That's all bacteria, that is, mate. What bacteria? I can't believe it's bacteria." Like, I get it, and I guess it's not scripted, and I guess they were going to put something in, just a kind of little bit of narrative to move it along. But that's sort of like, gee golly goshisms that they have all those things in there, and really unnecessary drama at their meetings whenever they chair a meeting with like only four people there and the steady cam is going around the room. It's like, why? Why are we doing this? Just back in the submersible. Let's go. Let's go. As far as the spacey bits go, I'm interested in the science of that, but so much of it was just pure speculation, and the CG doesn't hold up to the actual the images they shot down below the water. And I'm not saying it's not legit, but so much of that, when they're talking about finding ice on Europa and how they would do this and how they would do that, that science is untested and unproven. And when they even did the Mars drop that they were talking about, it didn't happen that way at all. And so it's kind of like, all right, I've got this dodgy science thing, and it's taking away from the bit I really like. And then the bit at the end, which just made me just give it 2 thumbs down, was, and I don't know if this is in the IMAX, and if you saw this bit, Regina, they have 2 of the scientists in that kind of in the bubble thing that they have, that rover thing, and they're like kind of doing their exploration thing, and it's all sort of staged for the cameras, and then it has these aliens that come up from under the water that are a bit like something out of the abyss, and you get to see the ethereal, like, glow in the dark city under the water. And it's like, no, hang on, mate. You just, you just brought the cheese, and again, you've taken me out of it, because what you already were showing me was so good, nothing else compares. And your hokey CGI stuff is just leaves a lot to the imagination, a lot to be desired. And so that's why I was sorely disappointed after watching that. Like, oh, it's a gem. No, it's not. It's overlooked for a reason, and that's why.
Oh God, yeah, I have not seen this Disney Plus version, and I'm happy that I didn't see that ending. That would have really, really ruined it for me. Oh,
so that must
God.
be really the context here, even in the difference of opinion. Is, I guess, what Regina watched and what we watched, there's some significant difference in what they show you.
Yeah, the home release, I want to say it's like 40 or 50 minutes longer. What you get in the IMAX runs less than an hour. It's quite taut, apparently, and it's just all the cool stuff.
Okay.
And then the version that's
short.
for home viewing, it's all the background stuff, and I don't mind some of it, but the CGI stuff and the spacey stuff, it's just irrelevant. It doesn't help you enjoy it anymore. It just makes you frustrated, especially because some of those scientists are so wooden when they're doing their fed lines.
Yeah.
I really felt like at times that it's like, I mean, I don't know. I've never interviewed him. I've just read things about him. I could totally see James Cameron wanting the cameras rolling when he's talking about what he knows and what he theorizes and what, I think he's all about putting himself on. I mean, because there are so many times where it's James Cameron telling all these incredibly educated people what we need to do, and how we need to do it. And then he's debating certain, life form philosophies with them. And I think, I wouldn't be least bit surprised if Cameron wanted that stuff in. Oh, they need to see me talking about this.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there was a little bit of that too that I think could have been cut out. But I mean, if you want to check it out, at least watch the first 30, 40 minutes and see some of that stuff they found under the water. And then when they veer off track, either fast forward through it or skip it altogether, because the stuff in the water is really incredible. The thing that I saw from the other list was Gus. I did go ahead and watch this film from, I believe it was 1976. And it's so funny because you really have to strap in for what you're about to see. And the first images from the film immediately make sure of that, because the beginning scene is at a soccer game, quote unquote soccer game. And you can totally tell the crowd is in front of a background. That they're not really outside, they're not really at a game, but it's 1976, so you just got to suspend disbelief there and just, say, okay, I'm going to run with the fact that these people are at a game and they're not in a studio. It's hard to do, but you get past that first part and things start to pick up a little bit. I didn't know Ed Asner was in this. He has a major role in this, and Tim Conway's in it. Tom Bosley, they come a little later, and they're a lot of the comic relief in this. There's a very, very, very young Dick Enberg in this, and along with Johnny Unitas. Johnny Unitas has kind of a funny part where he wants to be a broadcaster, but the guy next to him is kind of like Fred Willard from Best in Show, just talks incessantly while he just wants to say football things. And then Dick Butkus. It's so funny. Dick Butkus is in this, but he plays a character. He plays a football player, which he obviously was a very good football player. But he's not Dick Butkus. He's this dude that ends up becoming kind of the rival to the main character who owns Gus. Yeah, so the team is terrible. And, I mean, if you really like early slapstick, funny stuff, I mean, I laughed probably 5 or 6 times straight in the first 10 minutes as they were just showing how bad this team is. And not only that, how bad their cheerleaders are and how bad their band is. And it's very slapstick, slam bang theater type stuff. And there's some cheesy one-liners in there, but if you take it for what it's worth, it is funny. And, Don Knotts, I mean, gosh, it was really an interesting choice to put Don Knotts as a football coach. I mean, I realize he's the football coach of the worst team in the NFL, this team that they made up in the NFL called the California Atoms. But it's a classic, safe 1970s family entertainment movie, very much like what Jeff said it was when he was on a couple weeks ago. If you can take it for what it's worth and you just want to watch something that you cannot, I mean, already you can't take it seriously. You've got a mule that is kicking 100-yard field goals in the NFL. They even come up with a way in the story of how to explain how that's allowed. Is it said you can have X amount of players, 50 some odd players on an NFL team, but it doesn't say those players have to be human. So that's how it's legal that this mule can run onto the field and kick it. And so there's a rival to Ed Asner's character who tries to sabotage the mule and the owner at every turn, and that's where Tim Conway and Tom Bosley come in. There's these two goofy guys that get out of prison because they've been doing clearly a lot of bad stuff their whole lives, and they get hired to sabotage the success of the team by figuring out ways to keep the mule out of the game. So it is a very, very, very dated show, but I think if you just want to sit down and watch something kind of old and classic and fun that's safe for your kids to watch, I think Gus is fine. If you're going to take it seriously and you're going to care about how dated it is, then yes, you will absolutely despise it. And I guess that's what happened.
So it's actually funny that you say that, if you know that you're in the headspace for this movie, you can enjoy it. But if you are, self-aware and know that you're not, just go ahead and avoid it.
Yep.
After I watched my first 2 movies, I was feeling pretty good because neither of the movies I watched was I greatly disappointed in.
Okay.
And so I was like, okay, well, let's go 3 for 3. So I started watching Gus. I saw the beginning soccer scene. I saw that idiot kid fall in a well. And then I saw Gus hoof the soccer ball into the mountains. And then as soon as I saw him do that, I immediately stopped the movie because I was like, you know what? I know myself enough to know that I'm not going to be able to do this. And so I bailed. So I'm glad that you watched it.
No, I get it. I mean, because I was in a similar boat. Because I was prepared, but, sometimes you don't really know how prepared you're going to have to be, especially if you don't spend a lot of time watching movies that are that old. And, we're so used to things that look realistic. They'll go and shoot a scene and fill a soccer stadium today. And you can even tell that the field looks like some field in the middle of the street somewhere that they shot it. But I thought once they come back here and it's more about the team, the humor got better, and then the absurdity of stuff like that bothered me less. Fortunately, there weren't a whole lot more scenes like that. Obviously, the football game had to be shot a little similar, but it didn't bother me near as much as how I was totally disconnected from that soccer scene in the beginning. But yeah, I get what you're saying. I mean, it definitely hits you hard with old school stuff in the first 5 or 10 minutes. Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times I'm fine with that, but as I was watching it, I just felt myself not not watching it correctly or not giving it a chance of any kind. So I just was like, it's going to be better for both of us, Gus, if we just don't do this. So I went ahead and, sat down and watched Aristocats again.
Mm-hmm.
Because we had talked about it. My memory of it was that it was actually very good, and that this guy, was just completely bonkers for putting it at the top of his list of movies you should absolutely avoid. I think it's even better than it was when I watched it when I was younger.
Okay.
And yeah, absolutely. So part of his point of why Aristocats was relatively a failure is that he said that it was lazy. It was sort of unenthusiastic and just not a high quality Disney movie. And I just completely disagree. And I don't know if it's because, I know more about art or music now, but I thought it was incredibly beautiful and I thought it was incredibly intentional. And, the stress of Madame Bonafamille and her, ridiculous butler Edgar, and how her will was being manipulated and all of her money was going to be taken from her. I didn't understand that as a kid. I didn't understand that Edgar was trying to steal, all of her money and do all of these horrible things. Now I do. And so now there's even more tension than there was when I was a kid. Every side character in Aristocats has value. There's really no filler in the movie of any kind. So I'm here to say that Aristocats is still an absolutely fabulous movie.
I need to watch it again.
God, it's so good.
And for the record, it's fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. It's 66%, but that's still not. I mean, that's still fresh. And then the audience score is 70. So you're not alone.
No, and as I was watching it, I was even trying to be mindful of everything, that the author of the article was talking about. I wasn't just watching it to prove him wrong. I genuinely was like, okay, let's see if there's anything to what this guy was saying. And there just wasn't a single scene in that movie where I was like, yeah, you know what? This is a little lazy. It never happened. It seems like an incredibly deliberate and beautiful movie that's funny and stressful and sad at times, but it's just got everything that you want to tie a Disney bow on it. And I just don't understand what this guy was thinking, even more so now than when I first read it. And then my other movie, I decided to see if The Greatest Game Ever Played could make me care about watching a golf movie. And the thing is, I don't dislike golf. I've played a bit of golf. I used to take some golf lessons even. So golf isn't really the problem. It's just because I've played golf, imagining the pacing of a golf movie seems a little bit difficult. And it had the pacing issues that I thought a golf movie would have. But it was directed by Bill Paxton with what seems to be an incredible amount of affection and love for this historical story. It's based on a true story about basically this amateur golfer named Francis. During that time, around 1910, if you weren't super wealthy and just super well-to-do, you were not really playing golf because that was a gentleman's game. And he was, just incredibly adept at it. He was a caddy, but nobody took him seriously because he was basically a peasant. It's just rich people being rude to poor people kind of a setting. But, people realize his skill and he ends up, competing in the U.S. Open Championship with a 10-year-old caddy named Eddie. And that really happened. And he and Eddie ended up being friends for the rest of their lives. But this story was actually, it was really heartwarming. There was a lot of the movie where I was like, okay, this is okay. I'm not upset at, it's just a golf movie. But then towards the end, there was just an incredibly super touching moment between Francis and his dad, and I just cried out of nowhere. It just completely got me, completely surprised me in the end. I highly recommend this movie to pretty much anybody. It's just one of those nice, heartwarming watches that's also historically true, which is always interesting. But yeah, so I went into it not expecting to like it because it's a movie about golf. I was wrong, and I'm man enough to admit it.
That makes me want to watch it now because I love Bill Paxton. He did Frailty, and I love that movie. But obviously, this is wildly different. and he's just great in everything he's ever been in. Like throwback to The Abyss, to James Cameron earlier, like Paxton, man. I mean, so that makes me want to watch it just for that. Tell you the truth.
It's great. It's great, and it's weird. Like there's certain putts and certain scenes where you're just like, oh my God, it has to go in. And it was, it's really good. It's really good. There's definitely some times when it draws out, and it's a little bit of a slow start, just in general, story-wise. You're like, okay, when's this movie going to begin? But then once it does, it keeps its momentum till the end.
All right. Well, Nathan, we know one of your three. What were your other two?
So the other two are on the oh boy, these movies suck list. And the first one was keeping it meta with the old Streamcast, hit your air horn button, was the Aladdin sequel, Return of Jafar. I guess at the time when it came out, people really liked it. If you do the whole retrospective thing, you go back, it looks like it's a product of the old Disney Saturday morning, again, straight to TV or, serialized kind of things where you don't get the best animation and maybe they don't spend all the time on the songs and all the rest of it. We've spoken about this before, stuff like Gummy Bears, that's my jam. So when someone said, oh yeah, it's like the Saturday morning kind of like throwback stuff they had, I wasn't put off. I was reading about the movie some more, and they're like, yeah, there's not much genie in it. But was it Dan Castellaneta, who does Homer Simpson? He does the voice of the genie, and he does a pretty decent job, all things considered. But my favorite bit of Aladdin, which, apart from some of the songs, don't tell anyone, was Iago. And he's in loads of this. He's in absolutely loads of it. It's still Gilbert Gottfried, and he's there like just shrieking and squawking up around the place. And he gets some good lines. And I have to say, when you were saying about the list and the guy who wrote it and, how he described it, it is a load of hyperbole. I feel like it's just for shock value because it's not that bad. And dare I say, it's bordering on pretty decent. If you like Aladdin, you wouldn't be disappointed with it. Is it the same as the theatrical release? No, it's not. Not even slightly. But if you grew up in the 90s and you liked Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers and Tailspin and stuff like that and sort of DuckTales, it's similar fare. It feels very, very similar, like pacing-wise and animation style-wise. So, yeah, not surprised it's a direct-to-video. But, just really, really enjoyable, all things considered. So I guess what happens in it is Jafar, his lamp gets found by these naughty people, one in particular, the brilliantly named Abbas Mal, and... because he's abysmal. Do you get it? It's a joke. So anyway, he gets this lamp and he's, using it for his own ends. And Jafar is like, yeah, cool, I'm going to do all this for you, but you got to get Aladdin back for me because, I'm over that dude. And so the sort of the story kind of takes off and goes from there. It starts off with a really decent action sequence in a cave, very much like Cave of Wonder sort of thing. And, the songs are pretty anodyne. There's nothing special about them, except that, say, Gilbert Gottfried gets to sing them. But yeah, if you like Aladdin, you're going to like that film. You're not going to be disappointed with it. And even though there's not a lot of genie in it, Dan Castellaneta does do a pretty decent job of emulating Robin Williams. I think at the time, the director even said that, when Robin Williams wouldn't come back because, he was furious about the way he was used to advertise Aladdin, when he was like, I'm going to do it for scale, for voice acting. I'm not going to take the big Hollywood paycheck, but I'm just one of the cast. And all of a sudden it was Robin Williams this and Robin Williams that. So he held out and he wouldn't come back. But apparently casting Dan Castellaneta was slightly to do with him. He did recommend him for the job. And he does really, really well. The only thing about it, though, is that if you liked all the crazy improv stuff that that they were ad-libbing and animating to that, there's not a lot of that. The script doesn't reflect any of the craziness of the Robin Williams genie.
Okay.
But it is solid, and yeah, I think if you were to sit down with your kids and watch it, if they like Aladdin the original, they wouldn't be disappointed much with Aladdin 2. They would Return of Jafar. They would think it was pretty cool, all things considered. So that was one. The second, keeping it Robin Williams, was Jack,
Oh.
and I was intrigued, because the first line of the blurb on Screen Crush says one of the most demented, nightmarishly weird movies you may ever bear witness to. That's a pretty high bar to set, and it doesn't get there. It doesn't get there. I'm going to start off by saying it's Francis Ford Coppola directing, it's Robin Williams, and it's Diane Lane. How bad was it ever going to be? At borderline, it was going to be just, ugh. But it wasn't ever going to be like nightmarishly weird and demented and stuff. It's not Apocalypse Now. You know what you're kind of getting with some of those folks. So, and the premise of Jack, if you haven't seen it, and I hadn't, I was working in movies, cinema, whenever this came out, but I didn't get to watch it. Jack is a 10-year-old boy, played by Robin Williams, who's afflicted with a severe form of aging. And so whenever he's 10, he looks like he's 40. And because everything's so weird, his parents, mom, played by Diane Lane, keeps him in the house, homeschools him, all of that stuff, until he's like, man, it's just his tutor, played by Bill Cosby, I know, touchy, we'll get back to it, says, he should be in school with kids. He's lonely. He misses people. And so he goes to school, and he's the weird kid. But along the way, obviously, it's a Disney movie. He's going to make friends and be accepted as one of the kids. And there's some like coming of age things he has to deal with, like his first crush on a teacher played by Jennifer Lopez. And one of his best friend's mom hits on him in a bar because she doesn't know that he's actually a child, and that woman played by Fran Drescher. As I say, the hits keep on coming. Some decent names in this movie, and typical sort of heartwarming finish. Kind of has the whole oh no, this is all terrible thing like the third act of these movies movies like that tend to do. But then everyone comes around at the end, big rally around Jack, and everyone's really glad to see him and stuff, and ends up being I don't want to ruin it for anyone. I don't know that anyone's going to watch it based off my recommendation, but it does end very happily with him graduating and people thinking that he's the bomb and he's still one of the boys. And this is what I liked about Jack. The same reason I liked Bicentennial Man, and the same reason I liked Hook, which again, not a popular choice, is that whenever you think about people who are filled with childlike wonder, who have that energy, who can convey youth and hope and optimism and all those things, but then, despite, I guess, the limitations of their physical frame, because, and I'm feeling it. There's a line they say in Jack where he's in a bar and he's riffing off Michael McKean. So again, another great actor. And they says, you start losing your hair and then it starts popping up on your back. And I'm like, dude, I'm the wrong side of 40. I feel that every day. I feel it in my bones. Robin Williams, I've always known him as like a very hirsute, hairy dude and all the rest of it. And he looks every bit his years in this movie. But the way he portrays Jack and, the emotion and the vigor, and maybe at the same time, the uncertainty of what it's like to kind of have these hormonal things and what do you do with that, especially when you're a grown man. I mean, yeah, I felt it. I felt all of it. And the script is a bit of a clunker at times. Again, Bill Cosby has, I think, probably the best lines. He's a really great counterpoint to some of the hysteria that goes on with the parental kind of dynamic that goes on in this movie. Similar grounds, I guess, as, with Hook. It's like Peter Pan, Robin Williams, and people want him to get younger and be Peter Pan again and not be a grown man. And this kind of flips it a bit where it's, he's supposed to grow up, but he doesn't want to grow up, but people treat him like he's grown to some respect, but then his family treat him like they infantilize him because they want to keep him young and keep him safe forever, and they know they don't have much time with him. But I guess the message that it ultimately conveys is that regardless of who you are and what you do, time is fleeting and you've got to live your life and get the most out of it that you can, because you don't know how much you're going to get. And in Jack's case, he doesn't get a lot. man, I gotta be honest, I had all the feels at the end. Really, really good movie for me and my life. I liked it, and you couldn't ever get me to say bad things about a Francis Ford Coppola movie anyway. I mean, whatever, dude. He gets a pass for the rest of his life, probably.
Okay. Is your experience with checking out some of these movies on both lists going to inspire you to check out more from these lists, or are you done?
I still want to see Frank and Ollie.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, and the
sounds like we need to do a show on that one.
Yeah, I feel like that, especially just given what we've been talking about last few weeks. Oh man, I just feel that'd be a real important movie for us to check out and just like pay tribute to,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I need to go back and watch, and like I mentioned before, I still want to go back and watch Treasure Island, and I still want to go back like Regina and watch Aristocats again. It's amazing because while I can't remember a whole lot from that first viewing, I see still images and my brain's like, oh yes. There's almost like nostalgic triggers about that. It's clear that I loved it as a child. So I really do want to watch it again and have some memories roll through that. And I have a feeling I'm going to like the second viewing or the next viewing as much as Regina did.
It's just such a good movie.
Well, next week, we are going to talk about 2 good movies that we've already seen, but we think it's time to revisit them because one of those movies gave us a lot of trauma as we wrapped it up and then had to wait to find out if things could be remedied a year later. We are going to rewatch Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame next week and talk about that first experience watching those movies in the theater, and then just some of the reactions we still get as we watch those 2 epic films, rounding out that first group of phases in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Don't forget, you can find all of the episodes that we record on our website, DisneyPlusStreamcast.com. You can stream the shows directly from the website if you want. And, of course, you can find the Disney Plus Streamcast on popular podcast outlets like Spotify, Stitcher, and Apple Podcasts. We're also on Twitter at Disney Plus Cast. You can reach out to us through the email form on our website, or you can, of course, tweet us as well. As I mentioned, we are just about 3 months away from celebrating our 1-year anniversary of producing the Disney Plus Streamcast. If you have joined us at any point in this journey, we want to thank you so much for listening to the show and being with us today. And we look forward to having you back with us next week for another episode of the Disney Plus Streamcast.